If this is your first time here, welcome. This is the Dreyer Drive podcast. This is a podcast all about siblings and the people, places, and pop culture that raised us, hosted by me, Ryan, and my little sister, Jacqueline. And in today's episode, we'll start off by reminiscing, maybe, about some of the wonderful creative punishments that our older brother came up with when we were kids. Classics such as the slapper, and let's not forget the Scottish knock. After we finish reminiscing, we'll spend some time trying to come up with a sister city for our childhood hometown of Ajax, Ontario, Canada. And then we'll jump into today's main topic, which is NKOTB, New Kids on the Block, which is equal parts pop culture and sibling because of two of the siblings that were part of NKOTB, as well as the Donnie and Marky Mark dynamic, which we'll make sure to mention. After we're done talking about NKOTB, we'll wrap this episode up the same way we wrap up every single one of our episodes here on the Dreyer Drive podcast with an unhinged text message from a family member. Let's get into the episode.
When I was in Africa, I had to use an Android phone, and it was like I had never used a phone before in my life. And I was getting so frustrated because using my phone, an iPhone, is so second nature. Like, you don't even think about it. And then suddenly to have to use a new type of phone every time, I had no idea how to make a phone call. It was supposed to be for emergencies. I'm like, what good is this brick in case of emergencies? I don't know what to do with it.
The emergencies, I don't know how to use this.
I've never felt older in my life than being like, can someone under the age of 21 please help me use this phone? I don't understand technology. I've never seen this before in my life.
The same thing happened to me last year when I arrived here and decided it was time to go back to iPhone. And you're just used to all of the gestures, like what to pull down from. And I didn't know how to check notifications for a week. I'm like, which side, I don't know where to pull down from. I'm just swiping the screen. And I had to keep asking Seiko because she had been on iPhone for a few years prior, and now I can't switch back just because I'm used to it.
No,
so.
I was like, I was watching like an Instagram reel or whatever, and it was like, here, take a picture with my Android, and he's like, how do I open it? He's like, it's so easy. You just use your 4 front teeth and place them on the phone. Like, it's not that hard, and like everything. He's like, now what do I do? He's like, now you need to stay deeply into the camera. I would like to take a picture now, please. And it was just ridiculous. I'm like, that's surely how I felt.
It's crazy that our kids are going to grow up in that AI generation, but Noah will take my phone and she'll open up ChatGPT and she'll be like, the funny thing is she either calls it Google or Siri. She doesn't. It's really funny. She'll be like, Google, tell me a story about Princess Noah and a rainbow queen. And it'll be like, I've got it. And like starts telling, and she'll be like, now draw a picture. And it's like, sure, I'll make you a pizza. She's like, draw a picture. She's like, sure, a rainbow pizza. And it's just trolling Noah. But she will eventually get it to get like a picture of whatever she is like dictated to it.
For my unhinged text of the week, I'll actually read you out. Aaron, my youngest, and I were trying to figure out something. And I was like, let's just ask Meta AI or whatever I happen to have up at that moment. And the answers were so very wrong. And I was like, I work so I'm a copywriter. And for those who are not aware, you are aware, I'm a copywriter. And like the biggest discourse right now is like, is AI making our jobs obsolete? I'm like, no. Like I actually feel like I have more job security now that people are seeing that how easy it is to tell the difference between AI and like human written.
Let it be noted for the record that it has been weeks since Jacqueline has written a blog post for the Substack. Every single one has been written by AI. I want that to be, with a few edits, again, not by Jacqueline, that the copywriter in this family has contributed 0 to the Substack for the past 4 episodes.
Sometimes I go in and take out like words here and there that I'm like, I would never say that.
The way it always starts, like I'll be like, hey, here's the show notes, here's the transcript, this is what I need, I want to mention these things, I want to make sure it has these media embedded. And AI will come back always like, hey, Dreyer drivers, as like the first. I'm like, delete. I'm like, they're clearly Krispies. Which also there needs to be a fact-checking episode because there's a lot of facts that we've gotten wrong. A lot of things that have been completely wrong on this podcast up till now. For example, in the episode that went out on Tuesday, where everybody finally knows what we call our listeners, but they also don't know because we call them two different things in that episode. And I think also since then, we've been referring to them two different ways. So in that episode, I tell a story about us eating actual garbage batter from a deep fry basket, and they're called Krispies. And then somewhere in that episode, we start calling them Crunchies, but then we go back to calling them Krispies. And then every episode since then, we've just chosen Krispies or Crunchies. But let it be known, also for the record, you are all Krispies, okay?
The word is, yes, it's officially Krispies.
It's officially Krispies.
Final answer.
Krispies.
I also enjoy, like, Krispies sounds better than Crunchies, right?
It sounds crispy.
It sounds it's onomatopoeia.
Also, in the episode that went out last week, I tell a story about somebody puking in the La Flamme Bleue, the minivan that we had. And I said it was Daryl. As I was listening to it, I'm pretty certain it was Drew.
Oh, you know what?
Big detail.
It was Drew.
Big detail difference. But it wasn't Daryl, it was Drew. As I was listening, I was like, no, that's not right. And what's hilarious is how confidently I say things that are wrong, that are absolutely wrong. Like we were talking about Married with Children, right? I had to cut out the whole part where I'm just referring to him, the main guy, as the wrong name. I'm like, yeah, Ted Bundy. Mom would not let us watch Ted Bundy. There are a lot of things that we get wrong. And
this is not a facts-based podcast.
No, we've never claimed to be. But I think there will be like a catch-up episode where we get everybody in the family to fact check based on their memory of the events. So it'll kind of be like a family fact check. And we talked about this. Like there should be a segment that's the family fact check segment where people just like, actually, it was blah, blah, blah. Like dad was like, actually, it was fine fox of a mama, right? And we get these little quotes wrong or these little details wrong about what we ate or the name of the TV show or whatever.
I forecast that fact checking will turn into what we used to call a Royal Rumble, which is when everybody would congregate in the living room and fight.
Yes, that's what it'll be. We will not have them on the podcast to do the fact check because that would be just off the rails. But I think from time to time, we should go back and just update people. So Daryl, I apologize. It was in fact Drew. Drew, I'm sorry, but you're there now.
I do believe it was Drew. When you said it was Daryl, I was like,
no, don't be like that. Do not.
Daryl,
like, I was really highly questioning.
I just like, knowing what I know about Daryl, I don't think he was a nice boy. He wouldn't just barf in someone's car.
Mrs. Porter, could you pull the car over?
Mrs. Porter. I feel like because kids don't I think in just like the generation gap, like no one calls me Mrs. anything here. They either call me by my first name or don't look me in the eye. So I really feel like I'm missing out on just like being called like Mrs. whatever as like my kid's friend's mom. Like it's an end of an era. Nobody says that anymore.
Are you really missing out? Do you want to be called Mrs. Porter?
Absolutely. I feel like I want to bring in a plate of cookies one time just for fun. Like I don't want to do it with any sort of regularity. Just like one time. Do you remember there's an episode of The Simpsons, which we just talked about, the one that we just released. There's an episode of The Simpsons when Marge is walking into the room and the kids are talking about, she has like a plate of Rice Krispies and Tang and she has them on the tray and they're like, your mom's so cool. Like my mom would be in here right now with a plate of Rice Krispies and Tang. She comes in with the plate, she goes, oh, and turns around and walks back out.
So you were like, that mom you were saying?
I guess. I don't know. I feel like now when my kids' friends come over, they just like disappear and I never see them. I don't speak to them. They're here and then they're gone. I have no relationship with my kids' friends. When we had friends over to the house, like they were integrated. I was thinking about this earlier that like, I think it's very telling of our family that we didn't have a lot of just like casual acquaintances. Any person that was around our family was like immediately.
You are my best friend. You are family. Your last name is Porter. Now you have a dog.
Literally your
named
family
Taylor.
And like, you know everything about us. You'll be here for days on end and never see your family. Like that's the way we are around people. Like we're not casual acquaintance people. It's like you're immediately one of us. Like every time
do you hear that, Krispies? Are you registering this? You and us, we're together. You also grew up on Dreyer Drive.
You're a Porter. Sorry. Apologies. There's nothing we can do about it. Integrate it into our family.
They would come to the house. They wouldn't leave for days. We would do the same same thing at their houses. We would just go and just not return home for days and no one would care. And I was going to say the nerdiest 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old on this side would love sitting at the kitchen table talking to their parents. Like,
yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Sometimes more fun than hanging out with my own friends would be like sitting down and trying to find ways to like entertain the parents or make them laugh. And the funny thing is, like, I completely still fall into that role.
Oh,
so,
for sure.
Yeah. So a few weeks ago, mom and dad had a bunch of like our childhood friends' parents over
like,
at
put me in,
their
coach.
house. Yeah. I'm like, I FaceTimed mom and I was like, pass the phone. Like, give them the phone. I'm on. Just telling all these, just trying every bit to get them to laugh. And like, I hung up that call on such a high, like just got the laughs. They're like, oh, Ryan, you're so funny. I'm like, yes.
He still has it.
I hung up. I had to go and like drink a Gatorade, like just have a few minutes to decompress.
Rehydrate, just be like, oh, I was so charming just now.
Just replaying everything, be like, did I nail? I nailed it. I absolutely.
And like they're gonna go home and be like, what a great kid. You're like, I'm actually a grown human man at this point in time. I'm just like, I just want people to think I'm a good kid at the end of the day. Like, that one's a good egg.
That is all. You're special, Ryan.
I think that's the overarching theme of this podcast is you're special.
And my therapy. I'm like, but I just want people to tell me I'm special. It's all I want at the end of the day.
Like, I obviously have my own kids now, and I have one kid that's so good with adults, and it's embarrassing to me as the other adult in the room. I'm like, hey, just ignore him. Like, I can see how annoying it would be to have like a precocious child in your house. Just being like, anyways, Barb, and get out of here. Who invited this kid?
This is my show. You are a guest on my show.
Yes. Also a great overarching theme for the podcast is everybody's a guest on my show.
Do you remember Dan had this thing called the slapper?
Ryan, when I talk about working through things in therapy, the slapper is like number one. Were you a recipient of the slapper? Because I was frequent recipient of the slapper.
Scottish knock. It's there. So Dan used to do the slapper and the Scottish knock. And the Scottish knock was just a punch to the top of your head.
It hurts so bad.
It's the worst. And not with your fist knuckles, with the next row down. Mm-hmm. Like the way you would knock on the door, right? The way that you would knock on the door, let someone know you're there.
And it was like he had this knack of like finding like the last soft spot on your head
that hasn't fully formed from a baby.
Used it. And that's where he'd knock. But the slapper is when he would pin you down on the ground, and he would pin both of your arms underneath his knees, and then he would proceed to slap you in the face back and forth like a seal.
Like an otter playing with a rock?
Like a little back and forth again while you were crying profusely, screaming, "It's the slapper! It's the slapper!"
And then if you were really lucky, he would lean his face over and let some spit dangle out.
Stop! I will actually start crying right now. I'm not ready to bring up these feelings.
I already said if you were really lucky, but really if you were really lucky. Dan would also say it with a Scottish accent.
Okay, the best part is for today's episode, I'm going to try my hand at an accent that is, it might stay and you might have to cut it out because...
Please not be a racially sensitive accent.
It might be. It's going to get a little dicey, but I'm going to try it. Okay?
Dan had all of these punishments and he knew all the names of them. That was the thing. Everything had a name.
Sometimes it was apropos of nothing. It was just Daniel felt like torturing someone that day.
You just run through the living room, grab you by your head as he's flying through there and goes, "Diamond cutter!"
Do you remember there was one day you were swinging a baseball bat around the living room?
I think Dan received that bat as a birthday present.
Everybody was gone. We would always celebrate birthdays with like our extended family, and we'd have like a big birthday dinner or whatever. In my memory, it's a metal bat because I remember the sound. And you were in the living room, which our house
vibrations.
Dreyer Drive was not a large house, and the front living room, which was like the everything room, I don't know, like 10 feet wide. I mean, it was a small room, and I had been in the front foyer saying goodbye to everybody, and then I turned around and walked into the living room just as you swung the bat, and it caught me right in the side of the head.
It was the backswing, by the way. For those of you, I wasn't like waiting, here she comes, like Home Alone. Like it was on the backswing. So I was racking the bat over my shoulder, and Jacqueline happened to walk outside of my peripheral, and she got the aluminum bat right to the face.
And I remember making a dung sound, like a dung, and yes. It leveled me. I hit the ground so hard and was, I think, pretty much just out.
You were out. I got grounded, immediately sent to my room. And we talked about this in a previous episode. So you talked about like you have all of these journals, where I have one with like 8 pages filled out. There is a journal entry for that incident. I'm going to see if Mom still has that journal. We will read that journal entry on the pod.
I keep asking you every week, like, do you have a question of the week? And
so I do have a question this week. And if it's
okay, well, now I sound stupid.
What?
So I was like, you never have a question. I always have to do the question. You're like,
and just for the record, I quite often I do have a question prepared, and you just take the lead. And I'm like, all right, we'll go with Jacqueline's question again. This seems to be something she really likes.
I have been thinking about this all week long. I love asking people questions.
Which, by the way, I think you're really good at asking questions. I never ask questions on the podcast. You're like, do you remember? Oh, why is that? I'm like, let me just keep talking and make it about me. But you're really good at asking questions.
This is interesting because usually I get to think of my answers beforehand, and I'm surprising you with the question.
I was watching Japanese television, and on Japanese television it's either food or travel. That's all you get for the show themes. Like today,
or Terrace House.
Yes, or Terrace House. Well, that's Netflix, right? So but I'm talking about like Japanese television is like, today we're going to show you how to make this thing, or we're going to show people reacting to eating that thing, or we're going to teach you how to make that thing. And then a lot of it is also like travel, right? And there's this concept of sister cities. Okay. So do you know what a sister city is? We have this city here, and our sister city is going to be this random town in the German countryside. And they have this weird like a connection agreement. I don't know how the sister cities are decided on, but usually it's like somebody from one city has a connection to somebody from another city. Maybe they live there, there's an exchange student, something. And now like it's like by ordinance of the town, sister cities. Okay. So let me give you just a few examples, and that'll lead into the question. So for example, the town or the city of Chigasaki in Japan, their sister city is Honolulu, United States. Makes sense. Chigasaki is this like kind of like beach area where all the young people go to like hang out, and there's some beach bars and whatever. And then Honolulu, of course, makes sense because they're maybe the same vibe, right? And you go to places in Chigasaki and they have like Hawaii themed restaurants and bars and drinks and whatever. So that makes sense. So for example, there's a city called Hakodate in Japan, and their sister city is Halifax, Canada. There's a place called Hakone. Hakone is a very like touristy area just outside of Tokyo, and their sister city is Jasper, Canada. And so there's a lot of these different places. There's, I don't know, hundreds maybe. Like I'm going through the list on Wikipedia, and there are hundreds of these things. And there's New Zealand and Norway, some cities in South Korea, Malaysia, tons in the United States, Russia. Like there's just so many of these sister cities. Again, I don't know how they're formed, but I believe it's because someone has a connection on both sides. So all of that being said, now that you kind of understand this concept of sister city, they're kind of like, the friendship cities. If Ajax, Ontario had a sister city, what do you believe that sister city would be? And one of the ways that you might want to think about this is you watch maybe movies or television shows, and you see things in that show based in a certain area where you're like, this is really Ajax. Like, this is really Ajax of them. Or this really reminds me of growing up when we were kids or whatever. Like, do you have any movies or shows that you've watched that take place in a specific location that just felt familiar and that you would like to petition to be Ajax's sister city?
Okay, weirdly enough, I can't believe that I have an answer off the top of my head for this. truly, this is insane. So
if you say, hold on, there are too many of these where we have the same one. If you say the one that's on
no
my
way.
brain, I am going to be blown away. This is going to be way too, we need to go get tested.
For what?
For what?
Anyway.
I don't know. Like, I'd like for you to test us. Sometimes we have the same answer.
There's something going on here, Doc.
You guys are, yeah.
So actually this summer, because I was doing a lot of travel, I was like, I'm going to read some books that I've always meant to get around to reading and never really did. And one of the books, and sometimes I read books, not because like I'm actually going to enjoy them, but because I just feel like I should, like they're part of the narrative, like just they're part of the narrative. And like people say they're important books to read. So I'm like, oh, sure, I'll read them. It doesn't mean I'm going to enjoy it. Sometimes I actively hate the book. When I was traveling this summer, I finally was like, you know what? I'm going to read Stephen King's It. Like I just should, right? Like that's on my list. It seems like an important book of like, if you're going to read anything of Stephen King's, and you've already read The Stand, obviously, because
it's already cleared
that's your childhood favorite movie / miniseries. So I started reading It. And so it's always just kind of been in the back of my mind. I was like, sure, I'll just start reading it. I have never hated a book more. And it's not because it was like a badly written book. It was like torture to read. And I knew I was actively like hurting my brain to read it because I was going to have nightmares after I read it. But I just kept going. And it was just like the 3 worst weeks of my life. Just me on airplanes, like crying while reading it because I was uncomfortable the whole time. But the town in it, I was just looking up on my phone. It's called Derry, Maine. And I believe it's similar to where Stephen King grew up, and like all of his books are set in Maine. That's kind of like his thing. But the way the kids were kind of just, the whole point of it is that it's only about kids. There's not very many adults in the book. And it's just these kids kind of like riding around town on their bikes. There's a little pack, like a pack of 6 or 7 of them. The parents nowhere to be found, and they're getting into all sorts of shenanigans. Like they're fighting the face of evil on the earth as we know it, but like just getting up to stuff. And when I think about like being a kid in Ajax, and we were very free range kids as far as like if it was a summer day, I don't think our parents knew where we were or what we were doing. Past the age of 12, we had full autonomy as far as what you do on your own time, children, is your business. Just be home at dark. That was, mom.
Not in the back of a police car.
Not in the back of the police car, but like just stay out of trouble. Don't come home with a bunch of people. Just get out. And so we were playing. I was like, the fact that like we were just playing down at the lake all the time near a massive body of water. Yeah, jumping across the tubes. And so when I was reading it, aside from the fact that I hated the whole book, I did like the idea of these kids just riding around their bikes, free range, doing whatever they want. And I'm like, yeah, I recognized Ajax in that kind of thing. And now it's like, it sounds so idyllic, right? Like, oh, we got, in my day, we didn't have to set up play dates. We just went out with our friends. I mean, most of the time it was just extreme boredom, and that boredom leading to getting into trouble and doing things we weren't supposed to. But like, it was, what else are you going to do in July in Ajax? There
were times where like, there's all these little like forests and trails and factories in South Ajax that you could kind of get lost in or explore, or you found out that someone's older brother built a tent in the back of the factories behind 7-Eleven and was out there smoking BTs and shooting BB guns.
Someone's having a bonfire. You can just go meet up.
But I remember there was one summer where I believe there was a crime committed in Ajax, and it was kind of like the talk of the town. And I don't want to say what kind of crime, but it was not a nice one. And
it's not like those nice
not the good crimes. Not the good crimes. It was a bad crime, let me tell you. Okay. And me and some buddies were like riding BMX bikes through some of the forest trails behind the community center between like 7-Eleven and the community center. And we found clothes and we were like, guys, this is it. This belongs to, this is part of the crime. And then we found like more and more, and we started we're like, nobody touch it. Nobody touch it. This is a crime scene. So we started going through and like marking with sticks every time we found like articles of clothing. And I remember we didn't even wait until we were home. It was near Ryan Court. There was a court that named after the king himself, Ryan.
Obviously.
And
some of us, not all of us, can have Jack Russell Terriers. So
yeah, some of us gets quartz,
fine.
which is, I don't know if, is that an American, do Americans call it?
Americans call it a cul-de-sac.
Cul-de-sac. So there was a court called Ryan Court. We had friends that lived there. We didn't even wait. Like, I couldn't wait to get home. We had to stop off at that house and report, like, we need to call the police right now. We've got the crime scene. We've solved it. We've found all of the evidence for this crime. And of course, it was nothing. It was just probably someone walking home after school with their gym clothes fell out of their bag, or someone was picking on somebody, stole it and decided to whatever, or someone was carrying clothes to Goodwill and there was a whole, but I think they did call the cops, and the cops did come and check it out, and it was nothing. So that's the kind of stuff that you would do in Ajax on a summer day. You solve crimes.
I was with my friends one night, and one of my friends had a driver's license, and three of us didn't. And the four of us hung out all the time, but obviously one friend always had to drive because she was the only one who was 16 and had a license. She was a year older than us. And it was late one night, and we were just around the corner from our friend's house. I could say the street name. Wicks. It was Wicks. Wicks was a crescent street. And so we were just around the corner, and we saw a car, and it had some guys in it that we also knew. We decided, what else can we do but drag race through this small suburban street at 10 o'clock at night? So we decided we were going to race them. And 3 seconds into the race, we crashed. They crashed into us. They turned, and my friend didn't turn, and they ran into it. The friend who lived just around the corner was like, my parents cannot know this happened. We'll just work it out later, but they cannot know. A neighbor had seen the whole thing and called 911. So nobody can know turned into fire, ambulance, cops all show up. And we are 15 and 16-year-old girls just crying on the curb. So I decided the parents that needed to know were the ones who owned the car and the ones who lived around the corner. Like, our mom and dad did not need to know about this. And so that was the plan. The plan was never to tell mom and dad that we had been in this accident. And maybe 4 days later, dad had happened to go over to the house of the friends who owned the car. And they were like, hey, how's Jacqueline? And he was like, she's fine. And they're like, oh yeah, the girls were all just so shaken up after the accident. And dad was like, what are you talking about? And they explained everything that happened. Dad came home that night, and all he said to me was, don't keep stuff from us ever again. He said, I'm not going to tell mom. And I don't think he ever did tell mom. He's like, I'm not going to tell mom.
Jacqueline crashed your car. Mom, Jacqueline crashed your car. You're here for me. She crashed your car. She lied to you. She hid it from you. Mom.
Drag racing on Wicks. And I was like, what a cool dad, though, that he was just like, not pleased. I didn't get in trouble for it. He didn't raise his voice. He was just like, not cool, man. Don't keep stuff like that. I'm not going to tell your mom, and we're never going to speak of this again. And true to his word, I don't think dad has ever mentioned it to me ever again. It never came up.
And as repayment, you just ratted him out on the world's most popular podcast. You just narked him out. Right here. You're like, and let me tell you about my dad who lies for me.
I'm just saying, as far like if you were saying good crimes versus bad crimes, dad being an accessory to us,
good crime.
I'm sure we lied to the police, and I'm sure we lied to the insurance at some point in time about how that crash happened. That was a good crime, though. Appreciate it.
Good
but that's
crime.
Like 10 o'clock in the summer.
That should be a podcast. That should be its own podcast, Good Crime, where a team of people find crimes that were actually committed under like really good intentions. Let's spin out another podcast. It's going to be called
Why not?
Good Crime.
We've
Good
got
crime.
the time.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's something that I keep saying about myself is like, how do I have this much time in a day?
This is crazy. I didn't think being an adult would be like this all the time in the world. So yeah, Ajax, to me, it was just boredom, and that boredom equaling a measure of freedom, because mom didn't want to entertain us all the time. So we were left to our own devices.
So wait, so your sister city for Ajax is?
Derry, Maine, the city from It.
All right.
Stephen King's It.
All right.
Bet you didn't think that's where it was going to go.
Well, oddly enough, no, I'm just kidding. No way. I
was also reading it. We run in the same literary circles.
Same for me, because I'm sure you want to ask my sister city. Every single time I watch a movie about or that takes place in Boston,
okay,
I see Ajax like at its core, because the Boston movies that I tend to watch are like blue collar people or a group of friends that like you look at Good Will Hunting, for example, right? I look at Good Will Hunting, I'm like, yeah, I grew up with those guys. Do you know what I mean? Like I see a lot of Ajax in that. Even movies, like random Boston movies. Do you remember the movie Mystic River? I love the movie. I actually really do like the movie Mystic River. It's not an uplifting movie, so I don't want to, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It is actually a really good movie. Not the most uplifting movie, but there are parts of like Mystic River of like, you think about the whole thing stems from these kids playing hockey on the street, right? They're playing street hockey and this thing happens. And then the whole movie is like how that caused a bunch of long-term damage to the group of kids who were playing. But like the way that the adults are even still connected, still have this like common language, and that they're still like neighborhood. That's the only way I can explain it. Like the way that I explain a lot of people that I grew up with, like they're neighborhood guys. And for some reason, I think people understand that term, like they get it. And I may even pick that up from like a movie that takes place in Boston. But anytime I watch a movie that takes place in Boston, I'm like, it speaks to me. Like these are my people.
Have you ever seen, it's like a graph of the United States dissected in, well, not a graph. It's a map of the United States dissected into 4 sections. And it's the Southeast says acts nice is mean. The Northwest is acts nice is nice. Southwest is acts mean is mean. And the Northeast is acts mean is nice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And Boston, Ajax, acts mean is nice. Feels very familiar to me. Like, remember we were talking about Exeter?
Yeah.
And Exeter was filled with like the scariest people you've ever met, including our own brother. But
the ringleader like, himself.
They would like give you the shirt off their back are actually truly the nicest people you've ever met. Like the term salt of the earth, which is so old. Like what an old term, like to really just, especially because we did not live near the ocean. We were on Lake Ontario.
Yes, very polluted.
Not salty.
Part of it.
Not salty. But yeah, like just like down homey. They'll call you out on whatever they want. They'd be like outwardly mean to you, but they are probably the nicest people you've ever met.
The crispiest.
The crispiest. They're just crispy on the outside, puffy on the inside.
But like Boston, those movies about Boston, there's always someone who knows someone who's like into something, a little bit gray area. Someone has gone to jail. Someone's brother has like done this, and people get in these fights, and it just always reminds me of Ajax for some reason. And maybe that's like me trying to work.
But we both chose places in the Northeast.
Huh. Look at us.
So there's got to be some type of connection there that
there has to be. If me and you
get us tested.
So my answer is Boston. Again, anytime I watch a movie with Boston, I'm like, this is Ajax.
I wish we had the accent.
I do not. Sorry for all those who are from Boston.
Well, the sorry is the accent that you like you said we don't have. I was like, yeah, we don't really have accents, and you're like, sorry, we do not have
Okay. Sorry, I just said sorry. You moved away to the United States to a place where they pronounce get with an I in the middle. It's git. I'm gonna get you. No, you are not gonna get anything. Are you talking about GitHub, where people put up their coding repositories, where developers spend time debugging their code?
Utahns are what I would say are very lazy with the vowels and very harsh with their consonants. So a mountain is, but they come down really harsh on their like C's sometimes. It's a wild accent. It's so strange, and you can detect it anywhere in the world because it's so odd. It's not as like specific as like a Southern accent, and you definitely can't do it. Like I can't do it. I just know it when I hear it. I'm like, that is a person who grew up in Provo, Utah, that went to BYU. Very specific to the area.
Yeah, there's some of those accents that I can't place, but they really bother me. I'm listening to.
It's like it tickle in your ear. You're like, don't like that.
I'm listening to a parenting book right now. Yes, that's the phase of life that I'm in right now. I'm listening to a couple of books at the same time, but one of them is a parenting book. And the author also reads the book, and I don't think that necessarily matters, but she changes T's to D's when they're in the middle of a word. So it's not important, it's important. And I'm like, but no, there's clearly a T there. And there's a group of people that either like mittens, like kittens.
Oh, yeah. I say mittens, mitten and kitten.
They become like kittens or mittens or an apostrophe, mittens and kittens. Like you need to get yourself, you need to get tested.
Check yourself. That's awful.
But the book is good. Like I actually like the content in the book. It speaks to me as like some of the things that I want to do and be as a parent. But every time she says important, I question all of the facts in the book. The research, the studies, her experience as a child psychologist. I'm like, yeah, but you don't pronounce the T in the middle.
All you'd have to do.
You do that. I trust everything you said. Yeah.
Only the Krispies will get to hear this. My deepest, darkest secret is that like my greatest goal in life is to narrate an audiobook. Not because I think I have a good voice for it, but when I'm reading to my kids, I do very different voices for all the characters. And I'm like proud of that, like deeply proud that I can do all different voices and keep track in my head. Like, oh, got to do the different voice for this mean aunt and then do the nice one for the nice uncle. And like one day someone's going to hire me just off the sound of my voice here. Or like that voice of an angel. Tape?
You're being scouted from the Dreyer Drive podcast.
Every time I hear it myself, I'm like, have I always been this shrill or was this new? Like when you hear your own voice, it's the worst sound in the world.
I actually really enjoy listening to my voice every time I edit. I go back and I'm like, can I just hear me do this? I catch myself smiling. I am not kidding. There are points where I'm listening to me tell a story that I know very well because it is my story and I am smiling, grinning from ear to ear, waiting for the punchline. I cannot wait for the punchline.
Someone said to me, how long have you lived in Utah? After hearing the podcast, how long have you lived in Utah? And I was like, 21 years. And he's like, some of these memories that you're talking about, they sound fresh. And I'm like, oh, it's not that they're fresh. It's that we've told this story 50,000 times around the dinner table at Dreyer Drive. I'm like, trust me, this is not the first time some of these stories are being unearthed from our memories. Like some of these stories are well worn.
Yeah, it's like a Celine Dion concert, right? We know the hitters.
Playing the hits.
Yeah, we know what's going to hit. We know what the group wants to hear, and we've got a pretty good set. Do the one where the
cat's eye falls out.
Do the butt tumor. Do the butt tumor.
We love to hear it.
So, all right. Well, I love that question took a good 30 minutes, but we're here.
Just right on track. Well, I think I can break out my accent to introduce the topic, strangely enough. Since we're talking about accents anyway, I'm going for it.
Preparing.
I'm going for it.
Blowing up with birthday candles.
There's a man in our neighborhood from South Africa. So buckle up. There's a man in our neighborhood from South Africa. And he came up to my husband one day and he said to him, here we go. He said, my wife thinks you look like a movie star.
Sorry. Is that Forrest Gump? I'm sorry, did you just do? All of our South African listeners have just not only rated this 1 star,
set their phone
they've
on
dropped
fire.
off. They've unsubscribed. That was Forrest Gump.
That is the best South African news.
Can we hear it again?
My wife thinks you look like a movie star.
Stop. Stop.
And he told me this afterwards and said, he was very surprised. My husband's never been told before he looks like a movie star. That's the way
Justin looks like a movie star.
He said to Justin that his wife thinks Justin looks like a movie star. And then they had to sit and try and decipher. That's what I'm saying. He was trying to decipher. Everybody was like, what are you talking about? Justin was like, I'm confused. No one has ever said I look like anybody except just like a stone wall. That's mostly what he gets. Like, as a rock face. What are you?
Prop? Are we talking about movie props? A prop from a movie?
So it was a movie star, and the man was trying to explain who it was, and finally he realized that the movie star this man was talking about was in fact Donnie Wahlberg of New Kids on the Block.
Hold on. I need to bring up just so I'm going to do a little bit of typing here.
We'll have to do a side by side on the notes.
Oh my gosh, it's Justin. If I just cover up the hairline a little bit, no disrespect, Justin. If I cover up the hairline just a little bit, I am looking at Justin Oh my gosh.
And she is this man's wife is an avid watcher of the show Blue Bloods, where that's the show that Donnie Wahlberg is currently on. And every time she saw Justin, she was like, that man right there, he looks like a movie star.
That is, I cannot believe you married a New Kid on the Block.
So that's what we're talking about today is New Kids on the Block.
Are we really?
100%.
Oh my gosh.
That was my the wildest segue from accent
so
for me to
did any of that actually even happen?
It did, because every time I'm in the checkout at a grocery store and there's like a weird celebrity magazine out and there's a picture of Donnie Wahlberg on the front, I will take a picture and send it to Justin and be like, oh, ran into you today at the grocery store. There's Donnie. And what makes me laugh?
What grocery stores are you going to where there are magazines with Donnie Wahlberg on the front? Is this like Teen Bop? Is this just a leftover magazine from 1991?
No, it's actually, my grocery store is a time portal. And every time I go in it, I go back in time to 1989.
That would be a good movie. We're just
Grocery
at one
store.
place. It's the grocery store time portal. Okay, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Okay. We truly cannot. But that was my way of segueing into talking about, I was trying to think of, first of all, siblings in music, and something that also tied into just some formative years of when we were thinking about music. What made me laugh about this whole experience with this lady and thinking Justin looked like Donnie Wahlberg was I distinctly remember Daniel having a picture of Donnie Wahlberg on your bedroom wall when you guys were kids.
Okay, thank you for saying that, because Dan, to this day, out of embarrassment, will try to put that on me. Will try to put that on me. He'll be like, what are you talking about? That was you. Dan, I know you're listening. I remember your favorite New Kid on the Block was Joey.
And he had a Donnie picture on his wall?
I think they were all there.
It was all of them?
I think there were group shots, right? And then there were ones where they were on their own. But
well, everybody has a favorite New Kid on the Block.
I do not.
You do too. Pick one now.
I like Marky Mark. I was listening to Marky Mark.
Marky Mark. Sadly, mine wasn't actually Donnie, but I was like, how stoked would I be to know that I would grow up one day, marry a doppelganger of Donnie from New Kids on the Block. My favorite, I was a Jordan girl, so he was my favorite. When I was actually on the phone with one of my friends while I was researching all of this, which again, the research on my computer is, I'm on a list somewhere, 100%. But I was saying, I'm doing this New Kids on the Block. And she decided to then look up the pictures on her computer too, to be like, I remember. And she was like, which one did I like? And she was like, which are the two in the middle? And I was like, we're not looking at the same computer. We are on the phone. I don't know who.
Who's this? That's my husband.
I don't
You're
know.
looking at a photo of my husband. You're looking at a family. That's my husband.
I've just pasted Justin in the middle for Donnie. Okay, so
I want you to know that for Christmas, I am going to make a giant New Kids on the Block style like Teen Bop poster, and it's going to be like a dreamy photo of Justin right in the middle.
He did have a pair of Hammer pants at one point in time.
Who didn't?
So I like to think that just kismet, serendipity somewhere out there. We were both children listening to New Kids on the Block performing routines, and that was going to be my husband one day. So I don't know if you're aware, but Jordan and Jonathan in the New Kids on the Block are brothers, right?
I don't remember that, but I am just now being told that by Wikipedia, because this is what happens. You mentioned the topic. I furiously bring up the Wikipedia page to sound like I have some type of recollection of these things. I do not.
So the original members, actually, Donnie is the original New Kid on the Block.
What you mean by the original? Means like at one point it was just him?
He was the talent that they built this all around. He was actually a rapper, and that's what he was trying to be signed as, a rapper. And they were all, I wasn't aware, when you're a kid, everybody seems so much older than you. Mm-hmm. To remember how incredibly young the New Kids on the Block were, and the fact that I would never let my 12-year-old join a boy band. Joey was 12 when he joined. Donnie was the original that they built it on. Donnie was the one who knew I believe Jordan, and he tried to get two of his other friends to join the band. It didn't work out, but he had enough there that he was able to be signed, and they recruited the other ones to be part of it. Jordan happened to have a brother named Jonathan that they were like, perfect. And then they recruited Joey and Danny after the fact. This was all in 1985. The oldest, Donnie was 15. By the time they released their first album, he was only 16. But yeah, Joey was 12. That was the age span. Like a 12-year-old boy. Truly, can you imagine? Also, the idea that a boy band was formed that organically, like me and my friends want to start a band and get a record deal. Now it would be an X Factor. It would be an American Idol. Sure. This would never happen organically.
So just go back, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but when you said that Jonathan Knight and Jordan Knight were, like, you said they were scouted?
Jordan was friends with Donnie.
So, okay, so he was friends, and they're like, yeah, your brother can come too.
You're like, and your mom, the mom's like, you can join the boy band, but you have to take your brother. And like, no, not Jonathan.
He goes, yes.
It's like, you do not embarrass me. You have to stand over there.
And then again, just tell me again, because I wasn't paying attention at all. How did Joey fit into the picture? So we've got a couple.
Joey was recruited.
Okay.
Just as a talent.
Do we know how he was recruited? Is this like Pickering
Town
Town Center mall performance? Like, he's in, this is the guy.
Like, who can say it was 1985. Like, it was a wild, wild world. New Kids on the Block were, I would say, the first white boy group that was ever formed, and they were ever sorry, that statement is wild.
Do you?
Other than like, no, actually, I take it back. There were definitely boy groups in the 50s.
Hundreds, possibly thousands. Okay. What a wild statement. We want to talk about fact checking. Let's start with that live fact check. The New Kids on the Block were the first musical group to ever be formed that had boys in it.
Every like Shooby-Doo band is like, excuse me, ma'am? Check yourself. They were originally, what was interesting to me is they were originally like touted as like an urban R&B group, and that's what they were marketed as. And it just didn't, that's not how it played out. They tried to release those songs as like an R&B act, and the R&B world was like, actually not interested. But teenage girls and Daniel were very interested.
Joey.
Daniel's gonna be so mad when this comes out. You're like, seriously, you guys? Their original name was actually Nanook. It was not New Kids on the Block. Nanook was, they said it was a nonsense word, but it actually could be tied back to Canadian Inuit culture. It was a silent film that was about Canadian Inuits. And so as soon as they found out Nanook was actually like a word, they were like, ooh, no, thank you. It was like my South African accent where it's just like murky as far as...
It might be okay, but it also might be really offensive.
It might be okay, but it definitely could not be okay to some people. So they changed from Nanook. They debut. New Kid on the Block was actually a rap song that Donnie had written earlier, and they just were like, cool, sounds great. So when I say Donnie was the original New Kid on the Block, he was truly like, this was him from the start. Just justice for Donnie heads out there. Their debut album is 1986. First, it doesn't go well because it is, again, marketed towards R&B audiences. And once they kind of rethink their strategy, eventually 5 of the songs on that album reach the top 10. But it takes some time. It takes like 2 years for that to get to that point.
The debut album took, you said, 2 years to get to
really get traction. Yeah. And then by the time they released their second album, I think our family's favorite, Hangin' Tough, that would have been...
Do not try to rope me into this.
As a family.
This was not what we were marching around singing. And I don't believe that I was ever a big fan of NKOTB.
Do you know what I remember you being a big fan of, though?
What?
The Spin Doctors.
I had a cassette. Hey.
You had a cassette. You had the Pocket Full of Kryptonite cassette tape, and you listened to it a lot. So let's not get high and mighty about our music tastes. We were all just really slumming it in the 80s. You know what? We had tapes available to us. Some of us had one Mariah Carey tape that had the same 2 songs on both sides, and you just flip through emotions.
That extra mileage.
Yeah. So 1988, Hangin' Tough comes out. by that time, it's New Kids on the Block. Everybody loves them. That's when Step by Step, Hangin' Tough come out at the same. The Right Stuff. Do you remember The Right Stuff? And Weird Al's.
Weird Al's The White Stuff, which was about Oreo cookies.
And not anything weird and racial. Just Oreos.
Oreo cookies.
Oreo cookies. Their Step by Step, their biggest song ever, sells almost 20 million in globally. And I think we have like truly internet brain rot at this point in time because we have Spotify numbers and every song is downloaded 3 trillion times. But for a single to be purchased 20 million times in 1990.
Sam the Record Man.
From the HMV store, and with kids like allowance money, truly it's children buying this whatever pocket money they have. Like it was a lot. And at one point in time, New Kids on the Block are the highest paid entertainers. I think in the year 1990, they were making more than Michael Jackson at one point in time.
That is crazy.
Yeah, some of my favorite, and a lot of it was merchandise. Like I think anybody who went to school in the 90s could tell you they saw a New Kids on the Block lunchbox, t-shirts, whatever. They also had their own hotline, which is really interesting to me. It was $2 a minute to call in and listen to like music clips and little like audio clips that they recorded. Like, hey, I really like you.
That was a thing. That was a thing. Remember, like the fan club hotline was an actual thing. In the back of those magazines, you would see like an ad for the fan club where you could also write letters and receive letters if you like paid your fan club dues, but that they also had a hotline where it's just the recording of their voices.
And just children calling in and racking up hundreds of dollars in fees on their parents' phone lines. Can you imagine?
I can do that.
Okay. I'm glad you can. That was 1999. That's when they are the highest paid. They're raking in 1991. It says they raked in $400 million in merchandise alone.
No.
Yes. Yeah. I think in our heads, again, we were kids at this time. Like we could not understand. And there's no way to try and like, when you're like, it was $73 in 1983, but in our time, it would be X amount. I honestly don't think there's a way to say, because there's so much variety in entertainment, there's no way to say like this equals this in 2024 because it was singular and, like we also didn't have that much of a choice at that point in time. Like you watch what was on TV, you listen to what was on the family stereo, and that's what you consumed at that time.
The thing I didn't know, and I'm just learning by Googling as you're talking again to try to sound like I know something, they were huge in Japan.
Yep. I read like one of the biggest missteps that they make is that instead of, they were really hot in 91, and instead of like heading back in the studio and playing off that, they spent 91 touring Asia mostly, which was great for money wise, but that meant they were not creating anything new in the studio. And kind of by the time, first of all, while they're off touring in Asia, what's happening in America? Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch are sliding in there with their good vibrations and taking over the market. So they had the same managers, and the managers suddenly like, okay, New Kids on the Block are doing their thing in Asia. Let's start working on like the next big thing. The next big thing is going to be Marky Mark.
That's
his own brother.
His own brother. So by 92, they head back in the studio to try and start recording new songs. From that album, the highest any of the songs go is to 16th. It never cracks the top 10. And here's the other thing that's happening. Marky Mark is taking a lot of the interest. Milli Vanilli then is happening at the same time. And what happens with Milli Vanilli? It's a huge scandal about them lip syncing all of their songs. And so what happens to the New Kids on the Block? Suddenly people are like, you don't even sing your own songs, New Kids on the Block, to the point that they actually took a person to court for defamation for being accused claiming that they weren't singing
their own songs. That the defamation suit is thrown out because the man eventually recants his statement. Is like, okay, Joey, okay.
It's a prank. Donnie. It's just a prank.
I didn't mean it. But that happened in 92. But I feel like by then, kind of the damage is done. And Milli Vanilli's a joke. They've been gone for a year and people have kind of moved on. And now it starts to be like, it's not New Kids on the Block or funky fresh, but
please,
just funky.
Can you say that again with a South African accent, please?
And also something that comes up again and again and again is that the fact that they were marketed as like being like urban hip hop artists at the start. And that narrative like backfires really hard in the early 90s.
Yeah, early 90s is really like when gangster rap is starting to just explode, right? Mm-hmm. And you've got Joey McIntyre being like, yo, dog. And you're like, that's what like, gangster rap to say, right?
Yo, dog. That's your accent for a gangster rap.
That's my Joey McIntyre as a gangster rapper. Yo, dog.
Like, and it's not even the fact that they're just a boy band. It's like you're a boy band and you tried to be R&B, like you, like that's extra you. Like it really turns people off and it starts to become like they become a joke. It's really crazy how fast it happens. Like their downfall is within like a 1 to 2 year span.
The thing that's surprising because, time feels different, right? When you're a kid, it felt like they were on top for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And then when you're actually looking at the timeline, it was 3 really good years, 1 incredible world tour where they just hit number 1 in every country with different songs. That's the other part to mention. Like as I'm going through what actually charted, there are different songs in different countries, right? Like that's just great for them as right, from a sales perspective. Their Magic Summer Tour, sponsored by Coke, it grossed $74 million.
And like sponsored by Coke, can you imagine?
And I'm going through this in my brain right now. And I was just listening to it today. There's a Drake lyric where he says something along the lines of like 50 million for a something month road trip. And he talks about making $50 million for a tour. And I don't know if that's a gross or not. Like, I don't want, but still like Drake is bragging about a $50 million tour. Meanwhile, New Kids on the Block in the early 90s did a $74 million tour. And in brackets, it says $133 million adjusted for inflation.
Yeah. It's intense. And imagine, again, these are children. By the time of their height, Joey finally gets to be 16 years old. But they are kind of like truly kids experiencing this level of fame, this level of money, and also this downfall, this level of like public discourse about them too. Like I can't. Their last charted song is Dirty Dog, spelled with a W. Again, not like, guys, please stop trying to do this.
That was Joey. Joey came up with that. He's like, I got it, guys. Guys, I got it. I've been listening to a lot of the street music, and I'm going to say, yo, dog. They're like, Dirty Dog.
With a W.
They all have the same voice.
Dirty Dog only hits 66, and that's the last, that's their dying gasp before they're completely on their way out. The first person to leave the band is actually Jonathan. And Jonathan leaves the band. He cites that he is having like anxiety and panic attacks a lot of the time. Later, Jonathan comes out and also says that he was advised many times, please do not come out. This will ruin your career if you come out because your fan base is largely female. He actually he dates women. And in the end, he also says like, I didn't want to make a statement to come out. I just wanted to like go live my life. Like I didn't want to do this anymore. It was not good for his mental health.
Fair enough.
Yeah, which agreed. Yes, Jonathan, this is not good for your mental health. And also tabloids again in the 90s. We talked a little bit about this before. The tabloids in the 90s were lawless in what they were willing to do, and they were stalking. When rumors came out about Jonathan, they were just horrendous, nonstop stalking him. And finally he was like, I'm out. Like, this is not the life I want to live. I'll see you when I check out at the grocery store at my time travel grocery. The rest of after Jonathan leaves, I don't think the other 4 are like, they're really in it at that point anymore. They all decide like the best thing to do at this point is to disband. I can imagine as like teenagers and then young adults having an entire country make your career, after being on such a high, then make your career an entire joke. It's gotta be be a hard pill to swallow at that point. And so I can imagine the four of them are like, I think it's time. Donnie, of course, goes into acting, my movie star husband. And then the other three try to do solo projects with varying levels of success, I would say. They've tried to do a number of reunions that some have gone well, some have gone not great. The first reunion they tried to do is in 2004. Four of them say, yes, we want to do it. And Jonathan refuses. He doesn't want to come back. But then they tried to do another reunion and Jonathan says yes. And everybody says no.
Wait, what do you mean they? Jonathan's like, I'm bringing the band back. We're getting the boys back together. And everyone's like, I'm sorry, Jonathan, no.
I don't know why I think it's so funny that because we obviously have a brother named Jonathan, and we keep like talking out loud to Jonathan Knight, and it sounds like we're talking like Jonathan, stop.
No, Jonathan,
you're embarrassing yourself, Jonathan. Stop being so anxious all the time. Just relax, Jonathan. They do finally get together in 2008. They're gonna do a reunion tour. Strangely enough, the first leg of the first show of their reunion tour is in the Air Canada Centre in Toronto.
You said 2004?
2008. I think probably the only concert I ever saw at Air Canada Centre was actually, do you remember when SARS hit Toronto?
Yes.
So in
the original COVID. That's the
original COVID. The OG we got it first. Again, Canadians love saying other things are Canadian. Like, that was Canadian, right? COVID comes along. I'm like, that's Canadian, right?
Canadians and Mormons. Their favorite thing to do to call out that someone is Canadian. Call it the most annoying Mormon. People, Canadian Mormons. They're like, who's Canadian? And
the power. But when SARS happened, there was a benefit concert at the Air Canada Centre that I went to with my friends. And truly every famous Canadian band was there. It was Bare Naked Ladies. It was Avril Lavigne. It was Sarah McLachlan. It was Sum 41. It was Swollen Members.
Yeah.
It was an amazing concert because it was just like anybody who had just like the slightest Canadian connection was like, yeah, of course. And it was this like to raise money for SARS because first, like, was Toronto the only city that
Can we also see some receipts? Can we see some receipts for that? Because what were you doing with where did that fundraise where did the money go?
Truly, Toronto's like, thank you.
That's like somebody going, we're putting together a COVID benefit tour. What does that even mean? Who are you raising money for and where does that money go?
And I will say you haven't lived until you've heard If I Had $1 Million sung live by the Bare Naked Ladies. Like, sublime.
I'm going on the record right now, officially to state that while the Bare Naked Ladies do a pretty good version of their own song, the true GOAT, the real GOAT of that song is Mr. Weidrich. Mr. Weidrich.
I was like, if he doesn't say Mr. Weidrich, I'm quitting. I'm rage storming. What was it? Storm quitting?
Storm raging. No, storm quitting.
Storm quitting. I'm storm quitting the podcast if you don't say Mr. Weidrich. Our elementary school.
Our elementary school music teacher, Mr. Weidrich, who would like teach us like songs like If I Had $1 Million or like Cats in the Cradle.
Yes.
Right? He like teach us like kind of rock-ish songs.
Yes, he would do this project every year with his, I think the oldest kids, where you got to take a song and then break it down and like make a poster about it and then interpret each line. And did you do Cats in the Cradle? No, you did. Hang on, I need to look up the lyrics.
You can tell me the lyrics and I'll tell you what it is because the
angel opens her eyes, pale blue covered eyes. The lightning crashes.
Yes.
You did lightning crashes. And I remember this because I remember thinking it was the coolest project that anybody got. Like, it was so cool that you, like, for school, you got to listen to lightning crashes. And I was like, ooh, I can't wait to get in there. And by the time I did it, they stopped doing it. And I remember being so upset that I didn't get to, because I was like, ooh, when I get in there, like all the songs that I could choose from. But yeah, Mr. Weidrich would allow you to pick any song. And that was your project, was to break down each lyric and explain like what the songwriter meant by each lyric.
I have a Mr. Weidrich story. Kind of a Mr. Weidrich's music class story that shows how much of an absolute annoying kid that I was. So in
some of us never grew out of it.
So Scottish knock.
Some of Some of us are still annoying kids.
So from grade 4 to grade 6, we would do recorders, I believe. Like you get your recorder in grade 4, and then you have 3 years of just jamming on recorders as part of
Whose idea was like, you know what the first instrument for every annoying child needs to be? The most annoying sound anybody could ever make.
This is international. So Seiko also got the recorders in like grade 4 in Japan.
Who started it?
Noah has one here and I just can't stand it. But I guess I took the recorder home one weekend and I figured out the Sesame Street theme song on the recorder. And there was like for those of you who can't see me, if you're watching the video, it looks like I'm smoking a joint. I am not. I am playing the air recorder. So I figured out the Sesame Street theme song, and the next week there was like our recorder test, and
normal things recorder.
Yeah, it was like Amazing Grace or like Hot Cross Buns or something.
Hot Cross Buns.
Yeah. And I was like, Mr. Weidrich, can I play the Sesame Street theme song for my music test? And he was like, why, yes, you can. And after I was done playing this test, he used me as an example to the rest of the class, being like, this is what I'm talking about. Somebody who is invested enough, who goes home on their own time and finds out how to play one of their favorite tunes and then comes back here and shares it with the rest of you slackers.
A++++.
Yeah, I did. I got a perfect score.
I just remember playing the tests and then feeling really confident until Mr. Weidrich could be like, okay, Jacqueline, it's your turn. And then shaking profusely so that you're whistling into a recorder while shaking. So Hot Cross Buns is just like...
And then there's that one time where you miss it. It goes...
And just bless me, Mr. Weidrich's heart for being so supportive, just being like, great effort. Love it.
When he would bust out that guitar and start on If I Had $1 Million, just life was good.
If I Had $1 Million is one of those songs that I play at my kids and I'm like, this is what you guys need to be listening to. When I was thinking about like New Kids on the Block and the fact that like as a child, you just listen to what's playing. I know what's playing in your home, and New Kids on the Block was on, and that's what we had to listen to. And we're going to wrap this up by what time? Okay, yeah.
And I always do this, but what I was going to say is like there are those pockets of musicians, bands, genres even that just for like the span of 3 or 4 years of your life, it's the only thing that exists. New Kids on the Block, definitely one of those, right? Look at like the high school, I guess later elementary for you, but like Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, like those bands would have followed and kind of like been that, right? But then like kids these days have much, much cooler music to choose from because it's not just like the band that has the most money with the management and the record label to get them out. Because of all the different outlets, like I feel like now there's better options, there's more options, and there's more like authenticity to the music. Everything back then was so calculated. And I'm guessing now there's still a lot of...
They had one shot, you had one shot to create a boy band to take over the world. So everything had to be marketing.
Yeah, and it was 3 years.
Marketing.
Like that's look at the timeline. It was 3 years where they just owned the market internationally. And then like after their third year was done, it was like, okay, see you, New Kids on the Block. Who's next?
I also want to submit the fact that kids have better taste in music today is also the fact that they all have millennial parents right now. And it's like, you're welcome.
Shout out to us.
I would like to give us a little pat on the back for introducing our children.
Going through the dark years. The dark years. We walked so you could run. Let's just keep on cutting each other off. Okay, great. We could keep going with metaphors about... Let's just spitball this. Let's finish quickly. I'll give you a quick rundown of where they are now. Please
do.
We
know they kind of fall off the planet. They try a few reunion efforts. They finally do get a reunion effort off the ground, actually, with Backstreet Boys.
Yeah, NKOTB BSB.
BSB. And they also start doing cruises where they would do a tour cruise where you could pay money to go on a cruise, on a Carnival cruise with the New Kids on the Block, and they would do shows throughout the cruise. And those things, they said they sell out in less than 24 hours every time, and there's giant wait lists to get on them.
I imagine a world where somebody gets on one of those cruises and they don't know. They're like, There are a lot of middle-aged women, drunk women on the what? Why is everyone wearing these shirts with these people? And then you hear like, "Party people, all you dirty dogs!" And you look up, and Joey McIntyre is wearing like one of those Aloha shirts.
Honey, is that Joey McIntyre? Jordan owns an Italian restaurant, is married with a couple of kids. Donnie obviously married Jenny McCarthy and is still an actor.
Moved to Elk Ridge, Utah.
Where
his South African neighbor has outed him.
Joey is actually a podcaster and a Las Vegas performer now. So shout out to Joey, a fellow podcaster. Jonathan marries a personal trainer named Harley. I'm not going to say his last name because I'm struggling with it.
Because it's South African.
It's difficult to do in the accent. They host an HGTV show and they actually competed in the Amazing Race, family favorite Amazing Race. In 2015, they came in 9th. Danny, who I feel like is the least liked member across the board, Danny. He is married with 3 kids and runs a charity in honor of his mom. Jonathan and Jordan, just because this is a podcast about siblings, Jonathan and Jordan are on very good terms. They work together and they often do like guest appearances on the HGTV shows that they're on. It was just announced 4 days ago that they were going to team up for an HGTV show, Rock the Block. So if you're just dying to reunite with your friends, Jordan and Jonathan again.
So Jonathan, Jordan, I'm glad you're listening to this right now. And what I'd like to do, we've never done this before, but I'm going to do it now. I'm going to extend an invitation as you're doing the media rounds for your HGTV series. You're welcome on Dreyer Drive. Okay.
Please.
You're welcome on Dreyer Drive. We'd love to have you. We'd like to chop it up and learn a little bit about your sibling dynamics, but we'll see you when you show up here on the Dreyer Drive.
As a fellow sibling of someone named Jonathan, I think it's just a small club, and I think we could really relate.
Yeah, I think when things are destined, they're destined, and this is one of those things. So we'll see you Night Brothers soon.
Fingers crossed. Okay. All
right.
There you go.
Unhinged text. We got to get through it because we can't have an episode without it.
Okay. My unhinged text was, we were talking about AI actually trying to use AI for prompts and how Noah was using AI. And Aaron, my son, is really into Twisters, both Twister the movie and Twisters the recent movie. So the old one and the new one, he watches a lot of them. I don't know if that's healthy. He's often acting out scenes from Twisters. He's really obsessed with like, if there's a storm here, like, can we go chase it? And I'm like, we actually don't have tornadoes in the state of Utah.
He's also really into the party game Twister. It's just
to the point that he wants to be the character from Twisters for Halloween. And I keep telling him, no one's going to know what that is. He's just a man. He's just a man that wears a plaid shirt. And so he said, can you ask AI what a costume would be? Because I'm like, I don't even know how you would dress up. And the character's name is Tyler Owens. So we asked AI, how do I dress up as Tyler Owens from the movie Twisters as a Halloween costume? It answered, to dress up as Bill Paxton's character, Bill, the Extreme Harding, not Tyler Owens from the movie Twisters. Gives me an answer. And I said, the movie Twisters with an S, because that's a different movie. Said, here's what I found on Instagram. And then just sent me a bunch of reels that had nothing to do with Twisters. I replied.
Got distracted. It went on Instagram and got distracted. It's like, I know I came here for something specific, but now I'm looking at reels that have nothing to do with this. I'm just going to start sharing them with my friends.
There's a bunch of reels. And then I replied, that's not helpful. It replied back to me, I apologize for the mistake. To help you with your costume, can you please provide more information about the character Tyler Owens from Twisters? Then Aaron got distracted and said, can you ask it what car does it drive? So I said, what kind of car does Glenn Powell drive in the movie Twisters? In the movie Twisters, Glenn Powell's character Chase drives a modified 1987 Chevrolet Silverado. That is not true. And I know that for a fact because I'm now arguing with AI at this point.
I do it all the time.
Glenn Powell's truck in Twisters is a Dodge Ram. That's what I said to it because I know that for a fact. Said, thank you for the correction. I appreciate it when people help me with my accuracy. Yes, you are right. Glenn Powell's character Chase drives a Dodge Ram in the movie Twisters. And I said, Glenn Powell's character's name in Twisters is Tyler Owens, not Chase. Again, I need to be right to a robot is wild. Again, it just says, I apologize for the mistake. Thank you for correcting me. Yes, you are right. Then it says, I'll make sure to update my knowledge with the correct information. So to confirm, Glenn Powell plays Tyler Owens, drives a Dodge Ram truck. I appreciate your help in ensuring the accuracy of my knowledge. And that was the extent of the first and last conversation I think I'll ever have with AI. It brought out the worst in me. Well, I was like, that's not right.
But it contributed to the podcast, and that's what matters. So, well,
like, do I still want it to write it for us? Yes, sadly, I do.
On that note, thanks as always. This great trip down the block with the new kids.
The memory lane, also known as Dreyer Drive.
All right. We'll see you all next week for another bang.